I worked at several other places like Circor. I did roofing for a little bit.
Really?
Oil, natural. I worked on the oil field on valves and stuff. I've worked in every man field you could ever imagine. Lawn mowing,
Unbelievable.
every single thing. And then eventually I got
Roofing's a
pregnant
tough
with my first
job. I mean, that is
Yeah.
a
I got
Roofing in
no
Oklahoma.
joke.
My favorite thing is when I'm on the roof, people call the cops. They think I'm stuck. And then when the cops show up, nobody's on the roof with me except for me. So I'm like, oh,
Oh my gosh.
okay. And they're like, ma'am, are you stuck? No.
Hello, aviators. Welcome back to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast, where we bring you the knowledge and tools that let you become a pilot faster and cheaper. And this week, we have kind of a special episode. This is our first episode ever with a guest. And I can't imagine having someone with a more unique story on to be our very first guest on the podcast. This is awesome. And so grateful. And I know that anybody watching this or listening to this is going to really appreciate this story and be inspired. And I'll let Mike introduce our guest here.
Sure. Yeah. So, just a little background. Sean and I have been discussing for months really about our guests, and we wanted to have a mechanic, an aircraft mechanic on the show to talk about airplane maintenance. Because I know when I was coming up in deciding what career path to take, I considered being a A&P mechanic because I love planes, and Sean thought the same thing. So there's a lot of overlap. So I think a lot of our viewers would say, hey, maybe I should just work on planes, or maybe I should fly one. And it's something they're considering. And if you are going to be a professional pilot, it's important to know all the maintenance stuff involved with it. So here I am on YouTube, and I'm looking at aviation maintenance videos, and on my feed comes this Oklahoma news program with Miss Porsha Lippincott, our guest of honor, and it had a ton of views, and it was one of the most inspiring aviation videos I've ever seen, and it talks about her journey from literally being homeless to becoming a full-fledged A&P mechanic and an instructor. And we're just so excited to have you. So welcome, Porsha.
Thank you.
Oh, no
Yeah.
problem. So we're going to
when my wife heard your story, Mike,
Yeah.
we weren't even, the mechanic thing was going to be like down the road. Yeah, maybe we'll have a mechanic on someday. And then this story came across, and I was just ad-libbing your story to my wife, and she starts getting choked up, halfway through the story. And I'm sure I was screwing up the story, but it's just so inspiring. And
yes.
And we'll stop talking now.
Yeah. So the video that got millions of views folks, I want to say I was so excited to meet her, and we talked before this interview to get to know each other, and she's even much better in person than she was in that video. So thank you for coming. And we've heard that video was condensed. So we're really excited to hear the long form story of your career. So talk to us about, how this all happened and how you got to where you're at today. It's amazing.
So growing up, it's crazy because my house life was actually pretty good. My parents, I didn't have my real dad. He had passed away, and I never got to meet him. But my mother, she had a job. My stepdad had a job. We were stable kids. Our house was stable. There was really nothing wrong except for my sister, unfortunately, got into drugs early. And so during her struggle, there was a lot of tense, just a lot of drama and situations that made my mother completely depressed, and where me and my brother didn't even exist, except for when I left, my brother was actually taken care of and stuff. So my sister had stolen a car, wrecked it in the middle of the night. And I even told my mom, hey, Ariel stole a car. She's not even here. And my mom was like, oh, leave her alone. She's, tired or something. And we're like, okay. And then my mom gets that phone call. Well, me being, 16 years old, kind of smart ass. Sorry. I was like, hey, remember, because my mom's screaming on the phone, like, why did you do this? Why couldn't you stay in the house? And I was like, well, Mom, if you would have been a better parent, this would have never happened. And, that's not the right thing to say, but
Yeah.
unfortunately it caused me to be homeless. And I'm very thankful for a lot of the situations that happened. And moving forward, when I was homeless, I did have to live in a refrigerator box that we had as little kids. It was still in a immense condition. So it wasn't like the video where it looked like a jungle had grown out of it. It was still closable. And then over time, that box got bad. So I had to live in a trash can at Sonic. And then I got found out by the school because I had missed 3 months of school. The counselor and the homeless shelter for kids, which is independent living, they actually asked my schoolmates, have you guys seen Porsha? She's been missing. And I was that kid that wore my work clothes to school. So they all told on me. They're like, well, she wears Sonic outfits. So I'm assuming she works at Sonic.
Wow.
So they showed up, and I had lied. To be fair, I lied to my supervisor and told him I was doing night classes and that I could work during the day. I had completely lied because he was weirded out that I showed up in the morning when I should have been in school as a kid.
Right. And what grade would have this been? High school?
I believe this was 10th grade.
Okay. Wow.
10th, yeah. And so
wow. Yeah.
They caught me. Actually, they called my work after I had got off work. And usually when I got off work, I went either to the backyard, or when that time was over, I went behind the trash cans, or I kind of just ventured off for a little bit because I didn't want to be caught by the cameras or anybody else knowing I was living in one of the abandoned trash cans that we had.
Oh my
God.
It wasn't
as gross as everybody thought. Yeah.
Wow. Was it winter time or summer?
No, it was about to be summer. So I was about to not really graduate 10th grade, but it was about to be over, and I'd already missed 3 months. And so I had to do night school for summer school and summer school and night school just to make up for that. So my boss gets a phone call, and the school's like, hey, is there a Porsha there that works there? We've called all the Sonics and we can't find her. And he was like, yeah, she's my best employee. And we really did get an award for having some of the nicest car hops. And I was one of the names in it too.
Wow.
Well, I mean, what do I have to lose, He was like, yeah, she's my best. They're like, well, she hasn't been at school in 3 months. And he was like, oh, that's so weird, because she had told me to my face that she had been going to night school. So they set up a little thing, and I showed up the next morning, and I could tell my boss was being weird, and so was my best friend. And I was like, are you guys okay? And they're like, no, we're fine. How are you doing? And I was like, something's not good. Well, that day, those people showed up on the porch, and they had ordered some drinks, and they told me to go out there and give it to them. And I didn't think anything of it. And they're like, Porsha, are you Porsha? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, are you okay? Where are you? Why are you at school? And I just started crying, and they got me. They told me that they have a home for me. I can come live there. I will have to go to school. I'll have structure, stability, everything. I'm going to pretty much grow up as a little kid. And so that day they took me to the little apartment inside of this house. It's like four apartments in one little house. They gave me my own place. They set up all my bills that I would have to pay for. Oh my gosh, I got to go back to school, night classes. And then I had to still go to morning classes. When I got off, I could go to work. And then I had to go back to school to do some night shift and summer school. And I was able to graduate with my class, but nobody ever really saw me until the very end. So it was kind of shocking for them too. Like, Porsha? Yeah, that's me. Right. Here I am.
Wow.
But so moving forward from that, when I was in that program, they set up financial stuff. They set up school for me. Like right when I was about to graduate high school, I had already been enrolled into automotive. And the reason I did was because I had bought a car. It was a Jeep Grand Cherokee, a 93 Jeep Grand Cherokee. And I love still remembering the colors. It was like blue and purple, all purple and blue doors. And it had the worst, what was that?
I remember in the video, I remember you saying it was like 5 different colors or something.
Yes. And I really did love it. It was like, once you think about and appreciate what you had, that actually wasn't a bad car.
Mhm.
It was my shade. The tent had bubbled so bad. That was my first project. So I was peeling it off. I was trying to
Oh
learn how to
yeah.
peel it off. Oh, it smelled awful. I probably got some, poison from it, from sniffing it. Um, and then after that, I started doing other things. And then eventually it did stop working one day. And I cried and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I had some friends come and tell me I had no oil in my dipstick was empty. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, you're gonna have to figure out what to do, because they weren't mechanics, but they were like, you have no oil. Well, when I looked at you could go on, we had a computer there that we could go on for an hour. And I looked up, I believe it was YouTube at that time. I'm getting old, so I'm forgetting some stuff. And there was like some videos of what happens if you don't have oil, or what are some things you can look into. And I looked and it said, check your oil pan gasket, check this, check that, blah, 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 check your filter. So I watched that video on the Jeep, and then I went out to my car and looked and touched stuff. And lo and behold, my gasket was like sticking out. It had been pinched so bad that pieces of it were actually out of the pan. And so you could see like little holes. And of course, no wonder every time. And I always thought too, like when I parked somewhere, when I moved it, there was oil everywhere all over the ground. But as a kid, you don't think about those things. I can't imagine all the parents that were mad that I parked in their driveway,
Yes. Yeah.
Well, knowing that, we had some funds to take my car somewhere to get it fixed, because I didn't know anything about tools and stuff like that. So we took it to a shop. I'm not going to name the shop because they're still open, and I'm just like, oh. They wanted, I believe, and I still believe I have the invoice for it. I think it was either $1,700 or $1,900 for the oil pan gasket.
Oh man.
Just to be replaced. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, that's cost more than my car, because I only paid $1,100 for that car.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a serious thing. Like I'm thinking my engine blew up or something, and I have no idea. So when I went and looked at the video of how to change it and just looking up oil pan gaskets, I was like embarrassed at first. I was like, this is it? That's all I have to do, and then it'll be fixed. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk to some of the people there that can give me a ride to one of these, I don't know, O'Reilly's or AutoZone, and see if I can just get the stuff and figure it out myself. Because I couldn't afford it. And the Bridges was like, yeah, that's way too much money. We don't have funds like that. Maybe a few $100s, but not thousands of dollars for that. Well, come to find out, that gasket was $19.50. I remember that exactly.
Oh my gosh.
$19.50. I had to get oil. I stripped one of the bolts out. So the cool thing was that I got a helicoil, and I learned how to do it all. And once I got it took me 7 hours. When I think about it, it probably wouldn't take me 7 hours now. Absolutely not. But the whole process of it, and finally when it got all done, it started up. And I thought it was going to do like a choking thing where it was like, okay, you really starved us of oil, we're just going to fail all the way around. Well, and later it did. There was lots of failings of other things, like just so many things. But at that moment, it actually worked. And I knew if I could do that, I'm just going to do it forever. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I love the mechanical things. So I talked to our financial lady, as well as I got to teach the financial class too, because I was the most financially stable kid there. Yeah. But she did all of our taxes and our schooling. So she got my stuff ready, and she said, if you want to, they have automotive programs. And I said, okay, let's go. I'll do it. And they got me enrolled right when I graduated high school. I was able to go right into that program. So moving forward, I went through that.
This is car mechanic, ASC certified mechanic, correct?
Yes. And that's I don't know what it is now, but every 5 years when I was younger, I had to get recertified on all of the basics. You had to go back and get retested, unlike an A&P where you can have it as long as you're still working in that field. Mine's totally expired, so not a good idea to come to me.
I still think I'm sure you probably know more than the average bear, though.
I like to know enough to where I go places. I'm like, I don't think that's right. But when it comes to electrical stuff, I'm like, no, you know everything. I can't. No, that was not my strong point.
I
But
gotcha.
typically I still change my oil. I still do my tires, brakes. I'll still do everything on all the cars that I own, but I will not do electrical stuff. That's something I'm like, nope, I'm not even going to mess with that because I'm not going to start a fire.
So we're dying. You don't have an old Cherokee now, I don't think, do you?
No,
Like,
I upgraded to Infinity QX80.
There you go.
that's a little nicer. There you go.
Yeah.
Good.
After I got done with automotive, I worked at Sears Automotive, Big Red Sports and Imports. And those went good for a while. Sears unfortunately closed.
Okay.
There's no longer a Sears anymore. There might be one somewhere else, but they closed, so I lost my job. I worked at several other places like Circor. I did roofing for a little bit.
Really?
I worked on the oil field on valves and stuff. I've worked in every man field you could ever imagine. Lawn mowing, every single thing. And then eventually I got pregnant.
Roofing's a tough job. I mean, that is
roofing in Oklahoma.
Joke.
My favorite thing is when I'm on the roof, people call the cops. They think I'm stuck. And then when the cops show up, nobody's on the roof with me except for me. So I'm like, oh
my gosh.
Okay. And they're like, ma'am, are you stuck? No. Is there anybody working?
Unbelievable.
We got a woman stuck on the roof over here.
God. And a lot of the roofing places would hire illegal immigrants. And so
sure,
me being the only one up there, it's like, well, it looks like I'm stuck, but I'm not. That didn't last long. I did that for 6 months, and it got irritating that the cops were always being called. And then even my boss was mad.
This isn't one story. This is like every time you went to work,
every time I went to work, it was
they're rolling trucks.
Yes. And so I got tiring for my boss, and he was like, hey, I love you, and you're a great worker, but we can't keep having the cops called because we're losing time. I said, okay. And no big deal. So I did get pregnant. I unfortunately was raising my son alone, and I was falling back on not being able, I was losing a lot of my mechanical jobs. So I went back to Sonic. And during Sonic, there was this one lady that I had once reached out to that worked in the, in Oklahoma, we have a lot of programs like TANF, kind of like welfare, food stamps. And then I was trying to reach out to get child support for me and my son, and we were not able to find his dad. So I was able to get on TANF, food stamps, and all that stuff. Well, being on TANF here in Oklahoma, they allow to go to school for free. And when they found out I had the mechanical background, the lady was like, look, there's this wonderful program. It's crazy because I don't have any women in it. I've never had a woman go to it, but you would be a perfect candidate. And not only that, we have scholarships for you for that whole thing.
Wow.
And so I went and tested. I tested the highest in my whole entire class.
Nice.
Out of all the guys too. And they weren't on the TANF program. You just had to take a test to see your mechanical background and your knowledge. And if you passed a certain level, the school would accept you. And so that I passed. So the first thing was I had to go to school Monday through Thursday. They would pay the program I was on would pay me $13 an hour, which sounds crazy, not good. But then you would get $250 a week on top of that. They would pay for your gas. They would pay for your books, your licenses, your tools. So I did all of that. And I got everything from that school, the aviation school, paid for, even my licenses. While I was in that program, they had other write us a short story about being a woman or some little crazy thing, or write us a story that changed your view on things. And I did one over the Kool-Aid man. I talked about how everybody's we love the Kool-Aid guy. He's coming in, quenching our thirst, running through our buildings and destroying our cars. For 25 cents, he just quenched everybody's thirst. But when he leaves, who's going to pay that $50,000 damage he did? Turn into, oh my gosh, I'm broke, And so when I wrote that, I had a letter from the place saying that was the funniest, most awesome story they've ever read. Nobody's even thought how the Kool-Aid man has destroyed property. and they gave me $1,500.
That guy's a menace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's actually a criminal if you think about it. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for
Let's try and
quenching
lock that guy
everybody's
up.
thirst and diabetes later. But also,
yeah.
so I got a scholarship for that. And then single moms program, I also got a scholarship for that as well. And like I said, in Oklahoma, there are different scholarships. So I'm not sure throughout the world if there are other programs, but if you would just go online and look to see what your state or your places offer, I'm sure they have like little hidden ones somewhere. So
yeah,
Right.
that stuff's not
Right.
advertised a lot, and
isn't.
every state has their own programs with that, right down
Yeah.
to being called different names, but they might do similar things. But yeah, you'll have to check with the. I mean, sometimes it may be hard to find online too, because the stuff's so obscure and stashed away. But you almost need to go talk to somebody that knows all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Sorry. I
And
interrupted.
no, you're good. And also this goes for men too. There were two other guys not on the same TANF program I was, but they were on a TANF program through
Okay.
a different county. So even men were on programs that I was on that got free tools, free everything, free, yay, school was paid for. So because I remember having to sign in and they would have to sign in too. And we were the only students that did because we were on a certain program. But we did it and we got our AMP.
Wow.
I was the only girl in my class out of,
Wow.
I think there's 20, well, there's two classes out of 50 or 60 students. I was the only girl. But I did see
Wow.
some other girls on different shifts that were going to the school, and there was only two. So you didn't really, and we had this woman as a instructor too, Linda. I remember her name was Linda, and she taught the reciprocating engines. And so it was nice to have her, and just nice to see some women here and there. But it's almost like I was just a guy too. So I didn't really care to have women in the class or not. It wasn't anything to me. I was just so used to being around men my whole life that I was like, eh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got my AMP. That
Talk
was
to us
the
real
best
quick.
thing.
Yeah, actually,
what does it take to get your AMP? Just so the viewers know. As
Actually,
far
we
as
should probably
requirements.
start with what is an A&P for the.
Yeah. Yeah.
Airframe and power plant license.
Okay.
So they're
So-
two separate certificates, right?
Yes, there's two, but there's three things you have to do. You have to do a general too, and general goes with either the P side or the A side.
Gotcha.
And so it's just like physics and batteries. I can't remember everything I did. I just remember how I hated some of the classes. They're so boring. And one of our teachers was like, for red eyes. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. Oh. But you did have to take those. You either had to take general and your A when you went to go test for it, or your general and P. And then once you got done with that, then you could take your A or your P afterwards without having to do more general work. So the class is 18 months long. I'm not sure if that's just our school or maybe all of them, but in Oklahoma, our Metro Tech is 18 months for 4 days a week. And I believe is, I remember 8 hours. That sounds a lot, but I think that's right. And just all learning, and lots.
And it's a lot of practical stuff too, right? Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But once I went through each class, which is 6 months each, like general, airframe, power plant, I was able to do 6 months of both, or 6 months of all three. And then graduation. Well, when you're about to graduate, they have you do your resume, and they're like, hey, we're going to help you do your resume because all of these places around you, which is Wiley Post, Sundance, I'm just naming off some fun names, the Air Force bases, all of them. And then you have Will Rogers, AAR, and FAA. All of them are always looking for A&P mechanics. And we need to tailor y'all's resume to show that you have worked on these engines, you have worked on these aircraft, you know what you're doing, yada, yada, yada. And typically basic start is for like paying as almost like an internship is like $15 an hour out here. And so we all got our resume done. The Air Force Base called me like 2 weeks later and we're like, hi, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, is this like a job offer? And they're like, yes, we are interested. What are
Wow.
you doing? So,
And this was like 10 years ago. About what would be the time
yes,
frame?
yes, about 9.5 years ago. Yes.
Great.
And my class, everybody in my class was hired at the Air Force Base.
Wow.
So I was so excited because I thought I was going to work with them. Not a chance. Not even one. Everybody in my class was like sprawled out. There are so many at the Air Force Base I work at. There are so many different buildings and so many different engines because we don't work on aircraft necessarily. Some of them do, but I work specifically engines. I'm propulsion side of the Air Force Base. And only like 3 or 4 of the people I went to school with were in different engine areas. So maybe once a year, I would see one of them and be like, "Oh my gosh, how are you doing?" But it was awesome because that program, literally, the Air Force Base or AAR or Will Rogers, they want those people because they have that little bit of knowledge.
Sure.
And so I think still to this day, and even our Air Force Base is hiring hard.
Great.
Well, mechanics, I was just reading an article from one of the, I forget what source, I think it was NBAA, but they were saying that the need for mechanics is right there with the, pilot shortage we're in. There's a mechanic shortage that's looming as well. And,
yes.
I mean, everybody's hiring, and, if you're mechanics, pilots, flight attendants, yeah, aviation.
I'm not really sure why, because when COVID happened, cars and airplanes didn't really stop going. And so it's kind of like, what happened?
Yeah.
But,
right.
Well, what did happen was a lot of training and schooling stopped.
Yeah.
People, I don't know. Actually, we've had a whole podcast on why there's a pilot shortage. I think we did like 3 different pilot shortage episodes. But I mean, a lot of the same factors leading into the mechanic stuff as well, being short.
Yeah.
What would you say, Porsha, was the approximate cost of all your training had you paid out of pocket for it, do you think?
$12,000 for the school. I know that.
So for the 18-month program, in 18 months, I'm just assuming that other places are similar. So in 18 months, you either get your general and the A or the P. You don't walk out of there in 18 months with with an A and P complete, right?
So in 18 months, you go test during your time, like the 6 months, you go and test your general. Well, I'm sorry, in your year, you go and test your general airframe or general power plant, and it depends on which one you do first and your the school, because sometimes they'll send you to P first or your A first, and you can go test those 2 together. They try to get you to test early because you also have to take I'm not going to remember this. It's your FAA courses that they're like little tests. I remember taking those, and if you made over a 90, you got your money back. It was like $50 or $100 per test.
Huh.
And I scored 90, so I got my money back on each one. And
but
it's
you're
funny because
certificated mechanic after this school. You don't have to go out and get so many hours of experience before you take some.
You get you get your A&P.
Wow,
if you
that's
pass,
18 months. That's pretty good deal.
Yeah.
What's the test like? The practical test and everything, just so the viewers know.
Is there a written test and a practical test, like with an examiner, like watching you wrench on something, like you're not holding that?
I think it's FARS. Is it right? See, because at the Air Force Base, we don't practice the same FAA rules. So I've lost a lot of the FAA rules because the military base has their own standards, engineering and everything.
Gotcha.
And I think it's called FARS. You have to know FARS for your
Federal
A&P.
Aviation Regulations. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
At Tinker or at the Air Force Base, you do not have to know that stuff. I still have my A&P, and I do have some engines that are considered FAA regulated, which is the 117 engine, and practically anything Pratt & Whitney. But
yeah, you guys probably aren't using FAR. You're using technical orders, TO manuals, and
it's great, but it's different because the things that I once knew, I have to erase it all, because out on the Air Force Base, they have different standards and different regulations that are not in accordance with those things that we learned. Sorry, I'm getting
Gotcha. No
Gotcha.
problem.
So
tell us
go ahead.
what all airplanes are you working on or have you worked on?
Every single engine out on the Air Force Base I worked on. Every single one.
Okay.
And then I used to run the engines. Charge air, sorry.
No problem.
So when I first started out at the Air Force Base, they had me in what they call F-100s, F-15s and 16s. And those, the fighter jets, but I was working on the engines. And then after they had me go to cruise missiles, which I thought was so cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because then those
Tomahawk.
are I'm not really sure what it would go to. I just
she could tell you, but then she'd have to kill you.
Yeah, there might be some deaths.
Yes.
But I thought that was pretty cool to be able to go and work on the cruise missiles. And then I got pregnant and was able to go. We have something called MRB, and they put me upstairs because when you're pregnant out at the Air Force Base, they don't want any situation to happen to you. So they put me in a desk setting where I was able to do some engineering type things, admin stuff. During that time, the school called me back, Metro Tech. They were like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Just, working. Well, we have this program that your Air Force Base wants us to do, and that would be to teach the new hires the engine. And I said, "Okay, that's pretty cool. What do I need to do?" And they're like, "Just come and apply for it. You'll have an interview, and we'll go from there." They hired me immediately. And then I started right away. I was able to go. Unfortunately, I had to work the Air Force Base from a time to a time. And then I would work nights at the school.
Oh, okay.
The class.
Wow.
And I was teaching turbine engines. And that class was a month long. So I had 3 classes. And that was such a class. I was in a room full of people that have never touched a tool in their life. They were nail techs, Walmart greeters, never had a job.
Wow.
Like right out of high school. I had a diverse set of humans that had no idea about engines whatsoever. And then you had a few military vets and stuff like that. And so teaching that stuff was somewhat difficult. And then I had my baby and I went to test cell. And in test cell, at first during my, he was first born, feeding him and stuff like that, I was an admin, just like a phone answer database lady. And then after I was done doing everything for my child and he was able to go to daycare, they had me start running engines. So I ran the 101, the 117, and the 108 engines in test cell. And that was probably I've never experienced running an engine other than out at school. And that's not that cool looking because they're not on jet engines. They're not jets. They were like little reciprocating engines and piston driven engines. And so it's kind of boring. But seeing these were the augmenters and everything.
Yeah, you got a machine that can go full AUG, which is the military term for afterburner.
Wow.
Yeah. Man, you feel that power in your chest.
Jets? What military jets are those engines on?
Thing. It was
are those fighter engines or what are those?
Yes. A lot of them are, yeah.
Wow.
And she named off a couple GE engines that are made right here in Cincinnati as well.
Awesome.
Now, one of them is a cargo airplane, the C-17. The 117, that one is not a fighter, it's a cargo airplane. But gotcha. We don't work, I'm not familiar with the aircraft side. I know that we have the B-52, the B-1s, and some of the engines we're getting rid of, so they will not be at our base either. But all of that stuff, it is so cool. And I specialize in TF-33s, which is the AWACS, the B-52, and the Joint Star. However, the Joint Star is gone, so I have all the bomber. I have the bomber and the military AWACS airplane. Those are my specialty when it comes to engines.
Gotcha.
So what all ratings do you have now? So you have your A&P. Didn't you get an additional rating after that,
IA
or
maybe?
is there IA or anything?
No,
You guys probably don't need an IA for the
nope.
military stuff.
No, we don't. But I am what you considered an IA out there. I'm quality assurance. So
Oh, I gotcha.
right before the engine gets, so after a test cell, after we run the engine, there has to be a quality inspection before it goes to the flight line to make sure it's outside, flight worthy. And it took me a while to get that job too. I was telling that supervisor, I was like, hey, you're going to have to hire me because I am an amazing inspector. And it took a while and I got him. I tricked him. So now I'm a quality assurance.
Awesome.
And
I don't think you're tricking anybody. I think you're the real deal, Porsha.
I am. It's been definitely a blessing for sure for me. And I worked hard for it. And I have a lot of people that will be like, well, you probably made your way in because you're pretty or something. And I hate that more than anything because I can make some ugly faces. And my personality being around men my whole life, it's not always like beautiful. I have to be hard and rough too. I have to be like really ready to pounce silly situations with men because testosterone is so high.
Oh yeah, I've seen G.I. Jane. Yeah, you can't give us any leeway.
Yeah,
you gotta pound us down.
I'm watching Yellowstone right now, and then they bring the girl with all the cowboys and everything. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So tell us what it's like. We have a lot of female viewers, and they're probably thinking, they want to get into a pilot or aviation mechanic in these male-dominated business. What kind of advice would you give them? Is it like Yellowstone? You have to beat somebody up the first day, or what do you do?
Well, no matter what kind of field that's male predominant, to be honest, I think men love having women around because a lot of men they love the female energy, but there is a respect that we have to, and it's unfortunate that this is how it is, but there's a respect that we have to develop. And that is to let them know that we're not here to take their job. We're not here to do anything different. We just want to work too, because we have to. And something that I have told a lot of the women in my class, don't ever change who you are. Don't try to be harder than you are. If you're a girl, be a girl. If you need help, ask for help. Let these men know that you're still vulnerable and that you're still a woman and you need help, but you will help do the work too. Don't stop working because you'll lose their respect. Men, and I've worked in so many different fields with men. And if you work, they treat you with respect. If you show them that you can do the work up to an extent, obviously I'm not built to pick up huge items, but I'm going to try my best, the best I can, or get help. And men really appreciate if you can show that you're willing to work just as equal as them, or if not harder, but smarter. And they'll even tell you if you're doing something stupid. They'll be like, hey, that was dumb. How do you feel about that? Like, yeah, I should ask for help. I'm trying to be hard and I shouldn't be.
Great.
And I'm the one that will wear the lipstick and I'll have different color hair and my nails are like super long. I don't care. And if they make fun of me for it, I'll be like, oh, well, at least I'm okay with myself doing this while you guys are all hiding your personality.
Right.
It's just being a woman in that field can be super hard, but it can also be easy if you just get their respect. And you don't honestly, you don't really even have to get their respect because they're not paying your bills. Man, it's so hard to get.
Well,
it just takes time.
I'm thinking about this whole thing. You go from you're homeless as a child that's supposed to be going to school. You're living in a box, working a job, your car breaks down, and out of necessity, you get on YouTube, figure out how to work on this thing. Realize that, hey, I don't mind wrenching on stuff. As a matter of fact, maybe I'm even good at this. And you go down that path seeking this thing and then end up an aircraft mechanic at a military base working on some of our highest tech stuff mankind has, and you're teaching people how to do that when you're not doing that, and you're also now like the quality assurance person going around on the base making sure that the other people are doing their job right. I mean, it's just an amazing story to me. I guess I had a question for you, Porsha, before I had this. I really, just out of personal curiosity, when you were, what was your headspace like, when you're a 16, 17-year-old kid living in a box and you're not going to school, you're working your butt off just to so you could eat. I mean, what were you thinking to yourself? Well, this is over, whatever, this sucks. Or were you thinking it's all going to be all right? Everything's going to be fine.
That's it. I love that question. I've had that asked before. And when I think about it, even now, I can't tell you how much I appreciated going through the experience I did. And I know that sounds crazy because who wants to live in a box in a trash can? But I remember the beautiful times of it too. Like I had Tonka toys, those big, huge trucks that, I had coins in one and dollars and my checks in another. And I just remember enjoying those moments of seeing that I worked hard for that. And even though I slept in there and I had, there was a time I had to beat up a raccoon, and I'm telling you what, I'll never. Those are things that you will appreciate.
Got to fight with a raccoon?
Yeah. The trash can I lived in,
It is like Yellowstone.
Yeah, those raccoons they're not as cute as they think they are. But at the same time, it's like a respect value, like, hey, you want to do this again? And they're like, no, we don't. We're out. Okay. But I did have to fight a raccoon, and I walked myself to the health department to make sure I didn't have rabies or something like that. It didn't act weird, but being able to live in that moment as a kid and not be scared of being outdoors and having to do it. I don't know how I did it, because now I don't even like being outside that much because of the heat, because it's 107 in Oklahoma right now. But thinking about it, if I had to live like that again, I could do it. If I had to eat animals outside, I probably could. That raccoon, I would have made a hat out of something, whatever I had to do. But as I thought about it, what a moment. As a little kid too, like I took it so well. And I think as I get older, I kind of mourn those moments. I have moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, that really happened to me.
That was me.
But there are programs now for kids. If anything ever magical happened that I just won all this money, I would make so many programs for homeless children. And the first things I would do is put them in VOTEC type schools where they can learn a trade, just like I did.
Sure, exactly.
Why not?
Fantastic. Wow.
I mean, they have nothing to lose, so why not?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, now that, this incredible journey you've been through, and I would imagine, because I can see it, I mean, you must have like this, realize that, anything is possible for you. You could do anything. Anything you've gone after, you're at the top. I mean, what's next for you? What do you got your sights on now?
Well, I just, this isn't for everybody, and I would never push people, but I just accepted Jesus Christ. And so with that being said, my pastor has this book talking about doing things that matter, and all the dreams I've ever had growing up in my life. Why have I never just tried them and continue to try them to see if it was something that was a calling for me? One of them is I am a drummer. I'm learning how to drum. I've been doing it for a few months now. I've dreamed of being a drummer, especially, and I love death metal, which is crazy because people are like, what?
That's awesome.
So I want to be a double bass drummer, and I have been pursuing that dream. I also love cactuses and succulents, and I'm going to have my own nursery. I don't care how long it takes. I've already started my little pods and everything. Even though I've had all this trade school stuff, and people would want to hear, oh, I'm going to build my own airplane. Those are different types of dreams I've never really been into. I only did all these things because I had to survive, and I'm good at it. but the things that really like just crazy dreams, like being a drummer, being a nursery farm owner, those are dreams that make me smile and make me, those are the things I want to live for.
That's awesome.
And cosplaying, I do cosplay too, and that not a lot of people do that. And so I'm like, you know what? I'll be a cosplay drummer, nursery cosplay drummer.
Right. Yeah.
Huh.
So,
That is amazing.
Yeah,
So-
there's just dreams all day long. And I always try to tell people, if something you dream about over and over and over, it's probably a calling for you. Do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
That's great advice.
That is
Wow.
awesome.
Do you have anybody? Oh, I got a good one. I just thought of, Sean.
Yeah.
So thinking of Oklahoma City and the great country legend Toby Keith, he has a song, "How Do You Like Me Now?" Where he thinks about the people in his past, and now that he's made it, are there folks in your life now that maybe discouraged you, when you were working at Sonic and all that stuff, and now you've had all this great success and been so inspiring to people? Did that kind of help you? Did the haters kind of help push you through this a little bit?
Well, and it's funny because I still have, being quality assurance, I'm like a police officer. So I have haters all day long, every day, all day, all day long. I have to deal with somebody that hates something I do. So,
Yeah. If you don't have haters, you're not moving forward.
Yeah, they are the ones that actually push me to do what I do now. They're the ones standing in the background hating, but they're also making it better. They're also pushing me to do better. And so I'm just like, yeah, keep on hating because it makes it better for me.
Right,
they're my biggest supporters,
I follow David Goggins a little bit. He's an ultra marathon runner and a Navy SEAL, extraordinary guy. And in his second book that just came out, he says he actually goes on YouTube and on social media and he reads all the negative comments out loud and he records them. And then when he's running a marathon, he plays it back. You have to run.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some I read on my video that were kind of, people always want to find the worst in a video. They can't accept it. And some of them had nothing to do with the struggle. They only cared about one little snip that was said. And again, that video was so short. They took out a lot of the information that was necessary for other people. And so if those people knew the real whole story, they probably wouldn't have said the things they did. But in that little moment when I was reading them, I was like, I'm never going to be able to stop people from saying things or thinking things because hurt people.
Yes.
But I did it and I'm happy. My life is great. I mean, I'm not rich by any means, but I have 2 boys I raise alone and I'm doing it and I'm never going to stop.
Well, let me follow up with this question. So now that I brought up some of the negative things, but tenfold or 100-fold that, tell us, you mentioned off camera that the amount of people that reach out to you and thank you and that type of thing. You said your inbox just blows up every day. I mean, right.
Yes. And
it's mainly because of that news story, right? The news story driven all this. Was there any other?
Yes.
Okay.
That video, Oklahoma video, was such a hit from all over the world. They play that in aviation schools all over the world, and people have reached out to me just like you guys did. But it goes in my spam, so I don't ever see it until I'm like, what is this? And then I push on it, and then here's all of these messages from people, China, Dubai, India, just anywhere you can think of. People are telling me thank you for the inspiration. I do have people that ask for resources, but I can only tell you what you can do in Oklahoma because I don't know what's available in other countries and other states. I don't know the resources that they have, but maybe if they look into some of welfare isn't everybody's favorite thing to do, but if you have to survive, do what you can if the government has it. If you can get it and make it through and then be somebody, do it. We have these resources. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have an aviation maintenance kind of question for you here. As a pilot, the pinnacle of our career, the sliver of our industry, flying the airplanes, or the top rung of the ladder, if you take being an astronaut out of the equation, it would be like a captain at Delta Airlines or United Airlines or something like that. What is the equivalent in the A&P world? Would it be being a mechanic for Delta at a major airline, or is it way better to be like a, having your own aircraft maintenance shop or something, working on Cessnas? I don't know. What's the mindset in your field? I don't know if you guys even discuss that because you're doing the military type stuff. I don't know.
Honestly, with the information that I've learned out at the Air Force bases, is that if you had your own contract with the Air Force base on something that you invented or made or whatever, and they took it, you're set for life.
You can charge whatever you want. That's where those $300 screws come in. Yes.
Lockheed Martin is living and loads of money. I know they are.
Right. Yes.
It is, if I was to develop an idea, which I have.
You did, yeah. You innovated those cables and the connectors. Yeah,
we want to tell us about that. Yeah, start at the beginning on that one.
So unfortunately, they didn't like that part.
Oh, all right.
They didn't get any funding for it. I didn't get anything for that. But those electrical connectors, there is a process that was made in like 1964 that was something similar to that when they used copper as the connector if it's split in half. But nobody even brought that up, and that blueprint was gone, and everybody just wasn't using that. And then here I am, had no idea that was an even thing, and I did it, and it saved all this money. Well, yeah.
So in case our viewers haven't seen the video yet, so you solved a problem on an engine that saved the Air Force millions of dollars annually, right?
Yes, and those connectors were at least $3,000 to $5,000, and there was 3 per each inlet that I had to do. And every time there was any split or whatever, we were throwing them away. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's the continuity in this is still good. This is still good. I don't know why we just don't wrap this and do this. And eventually it got out. I had to battle some of the people that were ordering those parts saying, hey, why aren't we ordering these anymore? If we stop ordering these, that contractor that we have it'll cause issues. And so I was like, because there's no reason we should be paying $5,000 whenever we could just do a $2 fix for something. I mean, I'm doing 13 of these a day. There's times 3. This is ridiculous. And there's a lot of arguing, a lot of heartbreak for people, but it fixed them. And I don't know where they are now. They probably, who knows? I don't go to F-100s anymore, but that wire wrap is now used on every engine, EGT cables, any flex lines. That is the process that is used on all of them. So I don't know if that pushed it, but now everybody does it. So we are saving those cables.
Nice.
Can you give our viewers an idea of what like a new A&P makes annually, and then what somebody potentially could make once they get further along in their career?
So in Oklahoma, the regular wage scale, and they tell you at the aviation schools too, basic starting is like $15 to $17 an hour with you still going to school. So if you had your A&P and then you internship with wherever, it's like $20. And then as you progress, depending on where you go, like after 6 months, it's 22. After a year, it's 25. I know mechanics right now at the Air Force Base that are probably making $33 an hour.
Wow.
As just basic 1 year in. And I have my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and being an engineer out on the Air Force Base doesn't pay that well. So if anything were to ever happen, I know I'll be taken care of no matter where I go. But
so we missed that. So you went back to college and got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Wow.
Yeah. Jeez. All of the credits I had from aviation, automotive, and just going to school when I was younger got me to where I just had to take a few more classes, and I had to go and do what is it called? Like course classes, being in the class and doing it. And so I got my bachelor's in it, and it was hard and I didn't like any of it. That's part I try to avoid the most because it was my least favorite part of my life. So,
I see.
Yes, that school was not fun. There was not really anything great about that for me.
Man, this story just keeps getting better and better. I don't know. We have her on next time. She's going to be telling us how she just got hired with SpaceX and she's working for Elon.
And she's going to have a record deal as a drummer.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'm drumming on Teslas or something.
I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Your story is just so amazing and inspiring. Even if you weren't in the aviation industry, I feel like this is good for the people that view our stuff, because the people that view our stuff, maybe some of them do have the means to go chase down being a pilot or an A&P mechanic, but they don't know that they want to do that yet. And that's where you figured it out while working on your Jeep. Or maybe they do know they want to do it, but they don't have the means. There's no way I could do this. I don't have money for that. My parents can't afford this. And they just throw that dream away. But hearing your story of you not having anything and not knowing what you wanted, and now you're where you're at, I don't know. It just makes you feel good listening to stuff like
that. Not to mention I have kids. And that's I try to tell people, if you got kids, if you don't have kids and you're not chasing dreams, what the heck are you doing?
Right. It'd be so easy. Exactly.
Wow. Man. So the programs, what would you say to one of our, we get all these comments, all just like what Sean said. I'd love to be a pilot, or now they'll probably comment, I'd love to be a mechanic, but I don't have any money and I don't have the means. Now I know these programs that you were in were very specific to the Oklahoma City area. But how would you advise them, in general, to start searching for these type of programs?
Well, I was lucky to start with the homeless shelter, and they got me enrolled in a lot of things. But typically, let's say somebody was homeless and they had a phone and they were watching this, which would be crazy. But we're going to go with it, because nowadays you can have a phone. If they were able to listen to this, I would tell them that a lot of the homeless shelters actually have programs that will lead them, like, hey, here's some school. And I know this for a fact, because a lot of the church activities that our church is involved in, they go to other places, and they also tell us that a lot of those homeless shelters have like flyers, or hey, if you're interested in school, we need you, or hey, blah blah blah. There's that. And then a lot of the health departments or community centers for even the library, they have places where they will have need help or need something. And then online resources as well, depending on your location. And then I think DHS is a very known organization amongst the United States, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And even though, let's say you didn't have a kid, DHS is for also, human relations as well, not just children. And they have a lot of programs as well, like TANF, welfare, things to help you get on your feet so you can help give back to the community in some way instead of living on welfare. And so those are some of the programs that I try to tell people. I don't know about out of the country. It's different world there, different everything. So cool. I don't have the best advice for out of the country. Just hopefully they have something similar to what we have. And if come to America. Come on.
Right. What about aviation maintenance schools? I'm not sure if there's resources out there, like if they have something, in the pilot world. I think there's, all these flight schools there's like learntofly.com, and you can search for a flight school near you by putting in your zip code. I know we have a pretty good school here, Cincinnati State's A&P school is pretty good here in the Cincinnati area, but I didn't know if there was something like that for the mechanic stuff. You know what I mean? Like that, some centralized
find a school.
thing. To find the school. Yeah, find a school.
On the pilot side, when I was going to A&P, getting my A&P at Metro Tech, they had flyers everywhere for pilots. And it talked about like programs and stuff. And I will say I did go and try to be a pilot.
I was just going to ask you that. That was my next question.
The turbulence got me so uncomfortable. I couldn't, and I hate being weak, but I'm going to be strong and tell you guys I couldn't do it. I
thought you were about to tell me you had your pilot's license too. My mind was.
I almost did. I almost did it. The instrumental part was fine, but when I had to go do flight time, respectfully, I almost shit my pants. I couldn't do it. Turbulence scared me so bad. I'm not even scared of heights, but I did not enjoy that. And I'm such a strong person, but that was not, I knew right there and there, it was not for me.
It wasn't for you.
It wasn't for me. And I never want to do it again. Just to be quite frank, ever. I would rather stay in regular, huge airplanes than little baby Cessnas. That wasn't for me. But they do have programs. I was actually going to enroll myself once I was going to get really involved with it. But then once I got the first 2 flights that they take you through to show you, I was like, nope, I can't do this. I'm out. So some of them do offer programs. And like I said, those scholarships, the one I wrote the Kool-Aid guy with, those are everywhere. That I even saw some out of state that it's just you writing something and sending it to wherever it is, and they sending you a scholarship because they loved it, or you put time or effort into it. And those are available everywhere.
Huh.
Right.
Like, I don't have to be like, I think that one might have come from Wisconsin, and I'd have to go back and look. That's years ago. To see where, but I applied all sorts of scholarships that were just regular weird stuff they wanted, or single moms and single dads, something like that. There's scholarships all over United States that you can apply for, and they are willing to send money either to the school or heck to you, just whatever.
Huh.
Excellent.
Nice.
So a little humor. I know that you don't have to tell the truth on this, but mechanics make fun of pilots, don't they, really? Because we're always breaking things.
Here's how it goes at my work. The flight line and the engine shop, they fight. And they say that the flight line's always saying the engine shop are stupid because they don't know what they're doing. And then we say the flight line's stupid because they're just putting bubble gum and tape on everything before they send it. That's how we fight. We don't ever worry about the pilots, because maybe the flight line and the pilots fight, but we don't.
Oh, I gotcha. Oh boy. Yeah, I've heard mechanics call it pilot proofing, they gotta make
pilot
sure
proofing. Something breaks in the airplane. So what caused this to break? You're asking a mechanic. It was the button pusher sitting in the seat in the front of the machine.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time. I mean, this is an extraordinary interview, and we already want to have you back so you can update us on all the new things that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that our viewers are going to get a ton of value out of this. I mean, your time, your story is so inspiring, and if you can do it from where you came from, it's going to be very encouraging to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on
of course.
And sharing.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll be back next week, folks. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to keep having guests on the show as much as we can. I don't know, Mike, should we tell them what we got planned, guests coming up, or?
Yeah. Maybe a little teaser.
All right. It involves, it's just because she was already mentioned in an F-16. We got a buddy of mine coming on the show who was an F-16 pilot for the North Dakota Air Guard. And when he's not doing that, he's a corporate pilot. So he's going to be a pretty cool guest to talk to. But I don't know.
I'll have to hear if he talks crap about us.
You're way more. I don't know. Thank you so much, Porsha.
Yep. And give Porsha, please, a big like for coming on, because she took the time to do this. So thanks, everybody, for watching.